Here we go. Okay, so Simon, how wonderful to see you and all of your models there in the background. I suspect some of them are Star Trek, are they?
Well, no, no. In actual fact, you'll probably find most of them are Star Wars.
Oh, I
So
love that.
nearly all Star Wars. Although the thing I'm looking forward to most this month is that Airfix have just done a franchise with Lego, and they've got the Starship Enterprise just coming out on the 28th of November.
Do you know the
Happy
fact
days.
that happy days and the fact that I got Star Wars and Star Trek confused says something about me. Not good, not cool is what I'm thinking.
I
So,
think you actually I think it's the opposite. I think it means you are cool. Actually, I think
no,
you are
thank
cool.
Oh, thank you. Maybe girl code. No, let's not bring in feminism there. Anyway, all right. So I thought it would be really good to for you to introduce yourself to the audience, so you know what you've done and what you've written and what you did your PhD on and all that really good fun.
So, well, firstly, thank you for having me on. Because I love working with Andante Travels as you do. And my name's Dr. Simon Elliott, FSA. I'm an archaeologist, historian, and broadcaster. I've written 22 books on the classical world to date, and I've got three coming out next year. My main one this year was The African Emperor, which was a Sunday Times bestseller and was reviewed extensively across the media, including The Spectator, and is still in most Waterston stores I go in, which I absolutely love because I'm very vain.
Yeah,
And
you should be proud.
you've got to be proud if you're getting published.
Hmm.
And I do a lot of broadcast media with the likes of Channel 4, Channel 5, History Hit, been on Amazon Prime, that kind of thing. Do a lot of podcasts. So this is an environment I'm very used to. And I'm an active archaeologist. So I'm working on two programs, one in the northeast about the end of the Roman occupation in the northeast of Britain, and one on the south coast, which is also about the end of the Roman occupation in Britain. So there's a
Ah,
theme there, isn't there, coming through? And then I'm very fortunate to be a guide lecturer for Andante Travels and other tour companies and spend a few weeks a year literally living the dream, bringing to life a world that we both love for other people.
hmm. I think that's really special, isn't it? When you can walk the walk with other people, you know, walk in spaces that, you know, the ancients walked is utterly brilliant, and taking people along with you and sharing that journey is amazing.
That's
So,
I mean, I know we're going to be talking about it much more in depth later on, but that feeling you get when you're doing sort of what we call a pom, when you're doing the Roman Campania, and you've got the group for the first time on the coach, and if it's daylight, even better, and you've got the microphone,
mm,
and then you're explaining to them all the great places they're going to see, and then you say, oh, by the way, look at that enormous volcano over there. You're not going to lose sight of that now for the next week because it's all about that enormous volcano. That's really, really, really to me special.
yeah, I'm so with you. I imagine Spartacus various times trying to climb down there. So we're here to talk, among other things, not just about you and archaeology, and of course on Dante, which is why we're both here, by the way, but about your new book on Septimius Severus, which is, of course, available at all good bookstores. Can you give us a little bit of background on who this emperor was? Who was he, and why does he matter?
So he was the African emperor. He's also called the Black Emperor. He was born at Leptis Magna in North Africa in AD 145, became the emperor in 193, died in York in AD 211. And in between, he spent most of his life on campaign, hated being in Rome. He was only in Rome four times for a matter of months, which is intriguing because a lot of classical Rome that you and I both know well and guide lecture through is actually Severan.
Mm-hmm.
And the love of his life was Julia Domna, who's his second wife. He was the father of Caracalla and Geta, who famously never got on, hated each other. Caracalla killed Geta within a year of Severus dying in York in at the end of 211. And we have those two being the protagonists in Gladiator 2. Take it or leave it, Gladiator 2, but they are the protagonists in Gladiator
No.
2. We can have a view. We probably don't need to air it here. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing with Severus is so firstly, he was the emperor of the Roman Empire, right? And he was born in Africa. So you can make the case that he was the most powerful African ever born, which is a big thing to say, actually. If you're talking about power, military power, as a slice of contemporary history in his world,
Hmm.
possibly the most powerful African ever born. Famously dark-skinned, absolutely so proud of his North African heritage, maintained his guttural North African accent throughout his life. A very good prism for us to see the Roman world today, which is obviously, as we know, it's a Mediterranean. We love going to the Mediterranean, don't we? It's a Mediterranean empire, and the bits where I am now, the northwest of Europe, they're bolt-ons. But it's a very multicultural empire I see in the Mediterranean. So there's nothing at all that's out of place with Severus, with his dark skin, with his North African accent, coming from Africa, becoming the Roman emperor. And in the book, I talk about the Severan reset because you tend to find that he restyled the imperial administration in the way that he'd grown up in North Africa. So many of his North African relatives or friends ended up being governors,
Mm.
procurators, legates, etc. To the extent where when he died in York in AD 211, he basically, I think, based on my own calculations, about 70% of the regional governors were North African, basically to secure
Wow.
his rear while he was running the empire from York.
And Syrian as well?
So Julia Domna was Syrian. So
Hmm.
Julia Domna was Syrian, and he met Julia Domna when he was in Syria in his first major military posting, which was being the legate in charge of, I think it was Legio Four, Legio Four. I got it, Legio Four Scidica,
Oh,
which was the
all
legion
those names of those legions. Well done.
based in Zuegma, which is on the border between modern Turkey and Syria. While he was there, his wife Julia Domna, who he married later, she was the daughter. So for him, she was a very good catch. So
Mm.
she was the daughter of the chief priest of the sun god Elagabalus in Emesa. And that family, before it became part of the Roman world, were the royal family. So they were minted. Okay, they were absolutely minted.
Which is
So
not
from
why he
Severus,
married her, I'm sure.
absolutely not. Although I do think there's an element of being a love match because they were genuinely a power couple. If you look at Augustus
Mm.
and Livia Drusilla, it's exactly the same vibe and dynamic you get, where you get a woman of power, although she's using her own political agency through the men in her life, she's still using political agency to a greater extent than most women at the top of Roman society.
Absolutely. She was called Mother of the Camp, huh?
She was, yeah, because she was
Mhm.
always with him.
Yeah, and there's this great inscription in Ostia in the barracks of the Vigiles there. So she had a very visible power. Brilliant. So that's Septimius Severus had to get in Julia Domna there, of course.
Of course.
You were such an interesting character, isn't she? I think Zenobia tries to link herself to that, and I think both of them, somewhat vaguely, maybe historically, try to link themselves to Cleopatra. So, a triad of really important women. But okay, but Septimius Severus, in your
Yep.
book, what I found really interesting is your point, which is crucial, that um, actually, he didn't hide his Libyanness, his North Africanness. He actually vaunted it. He made a big deal of it. Unlike Hadrian, who we know when he went to Rome, I think when he was 17, he was teased for his accent. And I think he worked very hard on it, Hadrian, on his Spanish accent, trying to get rid of it. But your point about Septimius Severus actually being pleased with his accent is fantastic. What sorts of research or evidence, does other kinds of evidence does your book bring forward?
One of the really interesting things for me actually was using all my experience as a guide lecturer when I'm leading tours in Rome, revisiting sites that you and I know well, and
Hmm.
suddenly finding how much of it was actually Severan. I reckon it's about a third of classical Rome, central Rome today is Severan. So it's from big things like you've got the new Forma Urbis Museum on the Chilean Hill, which was from the Severan period. You've got the Temple of Elagabalus on top of the Palatine Hill, which is from the Severan period. You've got the Temple of Vesta rebuilt by Julie Domna. You've obviously got the Arch of Septimius Severus. Got that fabulous Arch of the Argentari in the Forum Borum, which I
Wonderful.
love. I love that because she's taller than he is. Now you
I didn't notice
now
that. Oh.
you remember that he would have seen that, and she would have seen that. So, and this is quite a gruesomely brutal Roman emperor. Roman emperors were anyway, but Severus was a military man. So the sculptor, when he was doing the design there, would have had in the back of her mind, I've got to make him as tall as possible. So he's probably shorter. He was probably shorter.
Oh, wow. Do we
And
know
then you
any
get
more
that.
about his height?
No, no, literally. I mean, that's the only point of reference we've got. It was said to be very stocky, dark skin, very stocky. I think of him as like a middleweight Olympic weightlifter, square and muscle. And then you've got that beautiful cultural appropriation on the Pantheon, where you've got, below the references to Marcus Agrippa and Hadrian, you've
Right.
got what's almost graffiti when you
Yeah.
look closely, saying, and also this was rebuilt by
Yeah.
Septimius Severus and Caracalla. Now that's important, that is, because the Severans are all about family and North Africa, but family. It was like a cartel or the mafia, and it was all about self-promotion. And one of the things that came out in the book when I was researching it, the second book I've written about Severus. The first one, Severus in Scotland, was about the campaigns at the end of his life,
Mhm.
but this is a full fat biography, and they come across as being very, very avaricious. So
Sure.
Severus had done away with about a third of the Senate between 193 and
Mm.
197
Mm.
who'd backed other candidates for the throne. And a
Mm.
lot of the wealth from their land or portable wealth didn't end up in the imperial fiscus, it ended up in the Severan back pocket. And you know what? They didn't care. They absolutely didn't care.
I mean, they were so beyond, I guess they felt so entitled. I guess also probably coming from that back of that horrific civil war, but yeah, they just pocket. Oh, that's hilarious. They just pocketed it. I think the mention you mentioned the Hadrian's Wall, and he had great plans for that, and you do wonder what would have happened to Hadrian's Wall had he not died, because I think that was the last I think great push, to try to settle the area more, maybe dive into the land of the Brigantes a little bit more, but he didn't. Why is this an exciting time for the scholars, for aficionados or travelers alike to think about Septimius Severus?
Africa. It's about Africa because it puts
Mm,
Africa back on the in a even more so than it is. It puts Africa, especially North Africa, back on the historical and archaeological map. I mean, I've had some fantastic emails from people from all over the world saying how great it is to see that there's a focus on Africa. There's an untold story there about a great man from Africa, and you and I know probably
mm,
he's one of the top 10 Roman emperors in terms of at least power, if nothing else. He had
mm,
more legions than anybody else. He expanded the borders of the empire more than even Trajan. And he fortified the areas he expanded as well, which Trajan didn't. So
mm.
for me, it's an untold story, which puts Africa back on the map, which is great for us, of course, because you and I both
Yeah,
lead tours for
yeah,
Andante Travels
we
in
sure do.
North Africa, which is
Absolutely.
it's the most wonderful place to go, isn't it? What a great site.
Do you know what I think about North Africa a lot? And it's a great place to visit because it really challenges everything you think about the Roman Empire. And this is something you're doing really interestingly, Simon. So I think you work on Hadrian's Wall, but also in the South. We're talking about borders there. So
Yeah,
borders
brilliant.
both in
Yeah,
time and space. So
yeah.
time and like here's the end of the border, but actually this is the end of the empire. And I think ends it that's interesting. And I think North Africa, when you go there, you realize, but hang on, this is very different to what you think the empire is. I had this very lively discussion with someone recently about the Roman Empire and how the Roman Empire was ruled with an iron fist. And I said, but hang on, I don't think that works at all. Go to North Africa. And you
Yeah.
can see that actually that is the richest part of the empire. And so, yeah. So I think
You've
it's
got
really important.
and you have one legionary fortress at Lambasis. I mean, very lazily when I'm doing my Algeria tour, I call Timgad the Lincoln of the South and York the Lambasis the York of the South because they're both fulfilling quite a similar function, sort of a colonia and then a sort of a legionary fortress. And of course, the
Mhm.
interesting thing with Severus is that you can, I mean, one of the big things he did between his conquest of Parthia, that's the Persians, and then late on in life, trying to conquer the far north of Britain. By the way, he thought he did it when he died. So he thought he'd done something no other Roman emperor had done, conquer the Parthians and the Britons. When he died, he thought he'd done it. You
Mm.
have something like the Septizodium, right? So the Septizodium is
Yeah.
this grand monumental facadal nymphaeum down the side of the Palatine Hill, where the Via Appia hits the Palatine Hill, 7 stories high, flowing water, Carrara marble. You also have a septisodium, a bit smaller, in Lambasis at the Legionary Fortress, because they build it really quickly when he arrived. Say, "Oh Christ, he's coming quick! We'll build that." We even get a reference to a septisodium in Leicester. Okay,
Really?
because there is a cursed scroll from Leicester, which is from a lady, and she says that when I was at the Septisodium, some Herbert stole my silver coins, and that's in the museum now, the Jury War Museum in Leicester. Highly recommended, by the way, if anyone wants to go. It's a brilliant new
Wow,
Roman
really?
museum. Yeah,
What is it called
and
again?
then it's the Jury War Museum in Leicester. It's the Roman Museum in Leicester. So Ratier. And then again, you have this excavation taking place at the moment at Carlisle, where they have a what they now
Mhm.
are now convinced is a Severan period, probably very grand Mancio to celebrate his visit there, which is
Wow.
they found a new inscription of Julia Domna
Wow.
in
Again,
Carlisle.
she's
In
back in
Carlisle, she's
Carlisle.
Carlisle.
Were you digging there with Pete Savin?
I went up there with Pete Savin. Yeah, Pete was giving me a tour. I've given a couple of lectures there over the past 2 years about Severus, just to help them contextualize the great man, as it were, because obviously he's part of the story of Northern Britain. You know, it was Severus turned York into his imperial capital for the last 3 years of his life, and when he was playing soldiers in the north with Caracalla, he left Julia Domna to run the empire for him. Julia Domna for 3 years, I think, ran the empire from York. Um, and
Mm.
while he was there, I mean, look at Hadrian's Wall. From what I've read, until the mid 19th century, Hadrian's Wall was referenced as the Severan Wall because the first inscriptions translated from the Severan rebuild.
Oh,
So your
wow.
point is very well made. It was a
Yeah.
really big project that they got there.
Yeah.
And when he died, he thought he'd done it. That's the point. When he died, he
Really
thought he'd done
funny,
it.
isn't it? Really funny. And then, if only he hadn't. Anyway, because Caracal is awful. Um, but
Agreed. Agreed.
I know. Actually, I have a child who has a celeb crush on Caracalla. I'm working on that one.
I'll help you.
Um, anyway, so how does scholarship change? I'm thinking about because we're interweaving these just different sites and scholarship, and one of the things we do as a company, and I think we do better than any other company, is to interweave scholarship with travel and trying to actually not only bring scholarship to the travel, making it accessible, but actually, bringing the travel to the scholarship too. It's a two-way process. So how does scholarship change the way in which we experience Roman sites?
I think you've always got something new to bring to a tour, haven't you? I mean, before, I'm sure you do it as well. We're both very well read on all the various sort of news publications for what we do and on broadly new publications. There's always new things. I mean, I'm always reading new things on the coach. In fact, or when I'm taking people around a site, something that you would love because you taught me, remember? You taught me
Uh-huh.
how to do
I,
this
I
job.
do
And
remember.
you did 2017.
Wow.
People like first person insight. So
Mm.
my granddad George was based near Cava de Torini, helping run a field hospital as a member of the Royal Engineers
Wow.
in 1944 and
Mm.
saw Vesuvius erupt. And I have his first person letters that he wrote to my grandma
No.
describing it. So I described that. I read them on the coach, and you can feel there that. And then when we're driving
Yeah,
down
yeah,
to Pyston, we're going past the
yeah,
invasion
yeah.
beaches. That's where he landed in Salerno. So
Gosh.
that first person thing, that's new, by the way. I've only found that out recently from my family. So I use that, and it gets people, even now talking
Yeah.
about it to you, the hairs on the back of my
Okay.
head are going up.
Me too.
Great stuff. So
Me
there's
too.
always new information we can use.
Yeah. And you change, the information we know changes. I mean, very basic facts change. I remember because I've been guiding a long time and I mean 30 years next year, by the way.
Blimey.
And I remember saying that the eruption happened on August the 24th. And now I mean nobody would say that in his right mind. And I remember saying, well, Mary Beard, what does she know? She's an expert on Roman religion and she should stick to her subject. Okay. So things change and also you change. And so therefore bringing that scholarship is really important. So we need to go to Algeria to experience it more. Sadly, we can't go to Leptis.
No,
Lepkin.
not if you want to leave, not if you want to come back.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Although the number of people who tell me they've been and they're really delighted to tell me they've been, I'd
I
love to share my photographs with you. And there's me going, dang, 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 dang.
I know, I know, I know, I know, I know. Yeah, I've been. So, just mean to say that. Just dropping it in there, Simon. Okay, so what about some practical takeaways for travelers? What do we look out for in here's a good way to say this. What do we look out for in Severus on some of the tours we lead? So which tours would you go on to experience Septimius Severus? And which monuments in those tours would you point out?
Rome straight away because Rome, it's all there
Mm,
for you. And the beauty of Rome is, it's all walkable. So you don't have to go on a coach. You don't need to do the Via Appia day. You can just basically do Severn Rome. There's probably
mm,
about 4 days worth of stuff you can do in Severn Rome. In addition to everything else, with a fantastic holiday. And then anywhere in North Africa, because he's North Africa and he came from North Africa. You go to Jamila, my favorite place in
wow,
possibly the Roman world, actually.
really?
The,
Oh, it is
the, the,
beautiful.
the, the city that cascades down an Atlas
Mm,
mountain hillside,
mm,
where you've got the Forum, it's the Severan Forum, you've got the Temple of the Severan Genii, which have the statue of Severus in it, and then you can see that looking through the Arch of Caracalla. Now, it's all rebuilt in the colonial period, but broadly, it's pretty accurate, and it's all there for you. That's the Severan dynasty in a nutshell. That's the beauty about the Severan dynasty, by the way, as well. People, when they like hearing about peoples of the past, they're not just interested in those that worked, they're interested in those who failed. And the dynasty
yeah.
itself was a failure. If you let's do the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Severus died in his bed. Caracalla was assassinated urinating against a tree in 217. Caracalla had earlier killed Geta, who died bleeding to death in Julie Domno's arms, apparently. Macrinus, the Praetorian prefect who had Caracalla assassinated, was assassinated. And then you have Elagabulus, who's assassinated with his mum, followed by Severus Alexander, who is assassinated with his mum. So, in actual fact, it's almost like The Godfather in its brutality. It's all there for you. You don't need Game of Thrones or Tolkien. It's all there in the Roman world for you.
I really like that part about you're absolutely right about history. I mean, I think fiction actually steals from history because it's actually much more interesting.
Yeah, oh,
Did
damn
you
right.
notice how many mothers you mentioned there? I mean,
I
it's not,
did.
yeah, lots of
Well,
mothers, right? Lots of women there.
so my first book coming out next year is called Women of Power in the Roman World, and
Fantastic.
that's why I'm researching at the moment Livia Drusilla for another book actually. But I've got a lot of data about Livia Drusilla now I'm working through. One of the chapters is called the Severan Julias,
All
right?
right. So
Because the Severan
Julia,
Julia Mesa, Julia Domna, and then the two Julia Mesa's two daughters, who were the mums of Elagabulus and Severus Alexander. The four of those together were unbelievable. In fact, Julia Mesa was absolutely unbelievable. She was the real power behind the throne,
and who was
and
she again?
she was Julie Domna's sister, and she kept the family together after Severus died, basically pulling all the strings at the top. Almost certainly had her daughter and Elagabulus assassinated because they weren't up to scratch.
Wow.
Very
Wow.
Roman.
Very,
So
I
the
mean,
Julia,
very, very, very Roman. I mean, I think it's one of the products of having the byproducts of having an imperial situation is that the women become important, which is why Livia is so hated, actually. Early on example of a woman who has more power than Roman senators. Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, and so I think both of us are when talking about the tours and Roman archaeology and the sites, the insights that we bring directly to the insights we bring to the sites that we bring directly. So, and I think going there, just experiencing Severus with a Severan, an expert it's second to none, isn't it? So you can either read the book or you can walk the book.
or do both.
Or do both. Oh, sorry.
Do both.
What am I saying? Either. Of course, you have to do both. So yeah, absolutely. Well, Simon, thank you very much for for this, and thank you, viewers, for watching it. Um, So make sure that this is a call to action to anybody who's viewing here, to look at the latest Roman civilizations brochure that can be found along with the list of tours on the www.andanthetravels.co.uk/Roman-civilizations. I think one of the great things I found in my life is that I have traveled so widely because of Andante, and have found so many things that I can piece together and bring to all of the tours. And I've met so many fantastic people along the way, including you, Simon, with your incredible output of publications. I don't know someone who does 3 books a year. What does your wife like you?
Keeps me quiet.
Not a mistake, gosh. Obviously she does. And I was saying that, gosh, it's a dampener on your social life is what I'm just thinking. But no, well done. And I'm just in awe. And thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Have a lovely afternoon, and here's to Andante.
Yay, brilliant.